As you walked in today, I hope you were able to visit and enjoy our mini showcase of today's luncheon sponsors and enjoyed the great music we heard as well. 6 organizations have joined forces to sponsor today's luncheon: the Arts Center Task Force, Arts Foundation of the Mid-Columbia, Mid-Columbia Symphony, Mid-Columbia Ballet, Mid-Columbia Master Singers, and Mid-Columbia Musical Theater. These 6 groups demonstrate the successful partnerships that have been forged between our local arts organizations. They stand to serve as a model for other industries as we continue to seek ways to work together and become one unified Tri-Cities community. Our sponsors' dates of incorporation range from as far back as 1945 to as recent as 2010. Together, they've serviced hundreds of thousands of people through concerts, exhibitions, workshops, public forums, festivals, and classes. 5 of their names utilize the term Mid-Columbia, showing both their internal connections and also the shared vision of their work throughout the region, beyond that of one particular town or county. Today's luncheon is sure to entertain, and I suggest that you all get your cell phones out to capture the fun that's in store for you.
Thank you, Lori. Good afternoon, everyone. Arts industry organizations of Tri-Cities have a long and colorful history, several of which, like the Symphony, date back to the start of the Hanford Project in the 1940s. In those early days, arts organizations provided Hanford employees and their families with creative and emotional outlets to balance their secretive, often highly stressful work environments. Today, our sponsors are pleased to continue to provide Tri-City residents, young and old alike, with first-rate opportunities to enjoy arts and entertainment as both creators and consumers. Arts and culture not only improve the quality of life for our region's residents, but also help attract and retain new talent in our ever-growing job markets. Increased collaborative projects over the past few years have strengthened the arts community's position on its biggest collective challenge: the lack of adequate, dedicated facilities to present their art. Recent happenings, like the Tri-Cities rebranding effort and redevelopment opportunities at Vista Field, have brought the arts community to the forefront of many of these conversations. After all, visual, performing, and literary artists have a natural drive of being bolder, brighter, and better by nature of their work. We cordially invite all of you to come out and see the amazing artistry that's being produced right here in your backyard, especially if you haven't been in a few years. You don't need to travel to Seattle, Spokane, or Portland all the time to enjoy quality art. Being somewhere in real time, experiencing art live, is a transformative experience that simply cannot be replicated on a digital screen. Being close to your home, where you can find free parking near the venue, is an added bonus. Please refer to the flyers at your table about our sponsors' upcoming events and performances. 6 of our organizations are proud to sponsor Karn's visit as keynote for today's luncheon. She has an important message to share: that arts and culture are more than just entertainment. Art is a vehicle through which we can experience deeply both the joys and sorrows of what it means to be human. It allows us to express ourselves when words fail. It even permits us to make up a few words once in a while.
When trying to express oneself, it's frankly quite absurd to leaf through lengthy lexicons to find the perfect word. A little spontaneity keeps conversation keen. You need to find a way to say precisely what When Stone Age men were chatting, simply grunting would suffice. Flourishes, it's so precocious. Because those Latin scholars never had a word like this. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. If you say it softly, the effect can be hypnosis.
Check your breath before you speak in case it's halitosis.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Of course, you can say it backwards, which is suacodaliopsipsiligarphinacrepus. So when the cat has got your tongue, there's no need for dismay. Just summon up this word and then you've got a lot to say.
Pick out those 18 consonants and 16 vowels as well, and put them in an order which is very hard to spell.
SUPERCALIFRAGILISTICEXPIALID.
Smarty pants.
What a treat. Thank you so much. What a treat. What a way to end the year, 2015, with lots of great entertainment and culture. Thank you so much to all 6 of our sponsors. It's been great partnering with Justin. He's a great ambassador for your group, and we look forward to continued partnership opportunities. Now I'd like to recognize our outstanding member of the month. I feel like we should sing or something, but you really don't want me doing that. So I'm just going to keep it to the script, I promise. The Tri-City Regional Chamber is pleased to announce Bill Robertson Nissan as the November Outstanding Member of the Month. Since joining the Regional Chamber in 2011, Bill Robertson Nissan has maintained a continuous presence at Regional Chamber functions, sponsoring events, and Bill is also serving on our board of directors. After moving to the Tri-Cities a few years ago, Bill and Debbie hit the ground running. In addition to their support of all of the chamber functions, they've also made a huge impact on the youth in our community. Some of the organizations that they've supported include the Boys and Girls Club, Pasco School District, and Relay for Life. Please help me welcome Bill and Debbie Robertson to the stage to accept this month's award. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Ron Boninger, the chair of our board, who's going to lead us through the rest of our program. Please help me welcome Ron.
There you go.
What a nice treat for a midday lunch to have that kind of great entertainment. That was a lot of fun to watch. So thanks, Lori, and thanks for everyone being with us today. Today's luncheon is an excellent opportunity for our members to learn about how important the arts are to our community. The reality is there are strong economic benefits in having arts and culture in our city. Civic leaders, economists, philanthropists, mainstream business leaders, and arts community leaders are engaged in lively dialogue about what constitutes the creative economy and to what degree it impacts a region's overall economic and cultural health. I'm very excited to learn more about that during today's program. But first, I'd like to introduce our Marketing Membership Director, Elizabeth Holt, to introduce our new members and present them with their membership plaques. Elizabeth?
Thanks, Ron. I'm excited to be able to announce some of our newest chamber members who are able to join us today. So if I call your name, please join Ron and accept your membership plaque, and then we'll pose for a group photo. First, we have Melissa Behan and Tiffany Wright with Lucky Flowers, Ryan Johnson with American Leak Detection, Andrea Hollenquist with Lash Envy, Misty Fuel with Girls on the Run, Kat Millicent with Kat Millicent Custom Art, Ron Hall with Columbia Basin Dive and Rescue, and we have Sue Caruso with the Hampton Inn at Southridge. Please join me in welcoming these new members. Next, I would like to recognize some of the Chamber's longest-standing members. The members I will mention have been members of the Chamber for 20 years or longer. First, we have Pat Quaddle, attorney at law, Kennewick School District, Cedars Restaurant, Columbia Basin College, Red Lion Hotels, AmeriGas, Frontier Title and Escrow, King Beverage, Unitech Services Group, AAA of Washington, the Fairfield Inn by Marriott, Catering to You, The Personal Touch, Boise, and Tri-Cities Licensing. Please join me in recognizing these longstanding members.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and welcome to our new members. Members are what make our chamber. Now, before introducing our speaker, I'd like to make a few personal comments. I'm not an artist. I'm the last person picked to play Pictionary, and based on my acting ability, I'm usually not a high draft pick for charades. I cannot carry a tune. When I was young, I played a poor saxophone. Just ask my wife, Patty. Finally, I have 2 left feet. Yet with all these artistic liabilities, I have a deep appreciation for the arts, both personally and from the viewpoint of business. For me personally, going to a great performance, seeing a dance group, or viewing the work of artists provides that other dimension of life that is different from the nonstop bustle we are challenged with every day. A good example of what happened today about how it made us feel seeing that type of performance. That other dimension of life is so important. It is calming, at least to me. We have a wonderful, driven, and dedicated arts community here, but we know we can provide more support. The more arts, the more opportunities for those moments of realization or just pure enjoyment that at times can be so important to all of us. Then there's the business side. Yesterday I Googled Performing Arts Center and economic impact. What I found was not surprising, but let me share this one item with you. The chairman of the Oklahoma Chamber of Commerce and past president of the American Bankers Association said this: I visited almost every city and town in Oklahoma. There's a visible difference in places with an active cultural community. I see people looking for places to park, stores staying open late, and restaurants packed with customers. The business day is extended, and the cash registers are ringing. Clearly, a great arts community is good for business. So with that, I'm very excited to welcome our keynote speaker, Hanan. Hanan was appointed Executive Director of ArtsWA, or Arts Washington, by Governor Jay Inslee in March 2014. Prior to this appointment, Karen was Executive Director of Arts Northwest, the regional service organization for the performing arts. She also founded and was the first Executive Director of the Olympic Peninsula's Juan de Fuca Festival of the Arts, a 4-day multicultural, multi-stage festival held each year during Memorial Day weekend. It also is offering programs, shows, and outreach to locals and visitors year-round. Karen is well known as a resource to the greater arts community in the Northwestern USA, and in 2014 was honored with a Distinguished Service Award in recognition of exceptional leadership and dedication to the field. Please help me welcome Karen.
Hi, everybody. All right, got my clicker. I'm good to go. As long as I can see what I'm seeing. There we go. So it really is a pleasure to be here. And I have to say, I was, first of all, very impressed by the size of your chamber out here. It's really quite remarkable. I've spoken to quite a few chambers and other groups, and you are one of the bigger chambers, I think, that I've spoken to yet. So it's a real honor. And especially to talk to you a little bit about the creative economy, which is, as Ron said, it's something that is really being talked about a lot today in communities and in the business community especially, I think. The arts community has known about the creative economy for a long while, but the business community now, which is often, by the way, the same thing, because most artists ultimately are small businesses. But it's become a factor, I think, as we've been able to collect the data that really backs up the fact that we have a tremendous creative economy. So before I go on, though, the funny accent is English. I grew up in England. My dad was actually Irish, but I grew up in England, so hence, English-Irish thing. Came to Washington in the 90s, but apparently the accent still holds. And in fact, it can often be very useful because for some peculiar reason, people think the British accent sounds like you know what you're talking about. So, I'll take that, whether I do or not. It's always kind of useful. So, okay, now I'm just going to see if I can make the clicker work. Hang on, okay. Where do I point this at? Seeing as it's not moving. Hang on. Okay, maybe having it the right way round is always a helpful thing. Okay, so the creative vitality of Washington State. This is something that we at the Washington State Arts Commission, so we are, of course, the state agency responsible for all things arts in our state. And we take a lot of pride in trying to do the very best job we can for that. That's a huge job. We're a very small agency. We have just 13 staff. We used to have 25. And back in the 90s, the budget we had then was about the same as we have now. So if you had allowed for inflation, we would have a budget well bigger than we have now. So one of my missions as the head of the agency is to really sort of develop streams as well as hoping for more appropriation from the legislature, but to develop other funding streams so we can invest better in communities like yours. But the creative vitality of a state or of any community has been very hard to track, and we realized that early on. So, excuse me. So my predecessor, Chris Tucker, who some of you I'm sure know, she was instrumental in working with one of our more well-heeled tech partners to try and get our arms around the problem of how do we really look at the creative economy and then define it and give it some statistics that will be legible and understandable and absolutely authentic. So working with the Western States Arts Federation, which is based in Denver, and they definitely have a lot more money than us, and they also have a great techie side to them. They helped us develop the Creative Vitality Index that essentially is something that counts the number of jobs in the creative industries. And then you ask, well, maybe you don't ask, but if you did, you would say, well, what are the creative industries? And those are actually defined by the IRS, and there are about 60-something of them. And they would run the gamut from architecture all the way through software developers. You know, if you think of the great industry of gaming, for example, you know, think about how much creativity goes into creating the great games that your kids play, and some of them not so great. But, you know, there's a lot of creativity that goes into it in general. So in our state, of course, it won't be any great surprise that gaming and software is a huge part of the creative industry. It might also surprise you to know that Microsoft is one of the largest employers of musicians in our state. And again, think of those games or any program that you have on. Very often there'll be music and or background visuals and so on, all of which require part of, you know, somebody or an organization or an ensemble from that creative economy to be part of it. So the Creative Vitality Index is the tool that we developed to help make understandable the creative economy. And what you're seeing here is a snapshot of Washington State in 2013. The Creative Vitality Index number you see top left, which says 0.98, that is how the Washington State is ranked right now in terms of our own creative number of jobs, nonprofit and for-profit revenues, and other sort of indicators that allow us to analyze the creative economy. Around the nation, 1 is the sort of the mean number that we all kind of bounce against. So in Washington State, our number is sort of held at this 0.98 sort of thing. We jogged up to 1, and then we came down again to 0.98. And the governor has tasked us, the state arts agency, with somehow helping raise the CVI number, the index number, to 1.05 by next year, which is not going to be a very easy thing to do. And we, of course, as the state arts agency, we're not in the business of necessarily creating jobs, but we are in the business of helping you understand what you have in your community so you can help create those creative jobs that will take these numbers up. But just a quick look at this snapshot here. You'll see we are counting jobs, and it's very precise. So we can tell you how many architects have you got in this zip code, and how many did you have last year? And this becomes a tracking mechanism for communities to know what it is they're dealing with. Software industry sales, you can see there, is by far the winner here in Washington State, not surprisingly. And then down at the bottom, you'll see things to do with state arts agency grants, and then, in fact, that is actually misnamed. It's not just the State Arts Agency, because that would be most of our budget we were giving out there, which we do not, because we have other things we must spend it on. But that includes a lot of the other grants money coming in through the National Endowment for the Arts and other things like that. So let's move on a little bit here. So this is Oregon. This is our neighbors with half the population, but they do have a higher creative vitality index number than we do for various reasons. But again, it's good for us as a state to look at our neighbors. And one small reason might be that they have a really good program to attract film and the making of film into their state, where we decided against offering some of the incentives that both Oregon and BC offer. And, you know, as a result, most of the movie making now goes straight around Washington State and goes to those other places. And it's a shame, I think, because the tax incentives we could offer would be well offset by not only the immediate monies being injected into economy by the making of a major movie, but also by the knock-on effect when if somebody comes and makes a movie in the Tri-Cities, you know, the after effect of that can go on for decades if you get a movie that's popular. So you have to sort of think with a bit of a bigger vision. Let's head over to King County, where, as you can see, not surprisingly, the most populated county in our state of our 39 counties, has by far the highest CVI number. And again, dominated by software development. And when I at dinner last night, I was talking to one of the folks there, and we were talking about Nintendo. And I was recounting a conversation that the CEO of Nintendo America had with one of my colleagues at the governor's office. And he said that 70% of his workforce has an arts background, and he looks for the arts background in his techs and his wonks and everybody else, because without that creative brain developed, he isn't going to get the people he needs to develop the next great game he's going to sell to all of you and your kids. But he also said he has a hard time finding those folks, not only in Washington, because we have sidelined an arts curriculum in so many of our schools, but also across the nation where we're doing very much that. And he said, I'm off to Delhi in India. I go to London, places like that to go get my employees. And those employees, they start at something like $90,000 a year. So these are serious jobs. But we are losing an opportunity if we are letting an arts curriculum that we do not have very well established in our schools. If we let that go and we're not creating the creative brains that somebody like that needs. So that's a direct quote from the head of Nintendo. All right, so let's come over here to Franklin and Benton County. And you can see your CVI number is 0.44. And this doesn't become a criticism because you're less than King County. I mean, you're always going to be less than King County just because, you know, I mean, think what they have over there. But really, this number is more just an indicator of what you have. It's not a qualification of good or bad. But over the years, what this will show you is how you as a community are doing. It also shows you what you have as a community. So if you look at some of the different jobs that you see there, those will be somewhat unique to the Tri-Cities area, to Franklin and Benton County. And as we move through some of the examples, many communities are now looking at something like this and saying, okay, because we have X, now we should do Y. And it gives you something to respond to. So at the bottom there, you'll see you have an increase in your creative industries. You also have an increase in the revenues of your cultural nonprofits. So again, all good indicators, a slight sort of going down in your creative jobs. But again, now you know what you have. And this is something we can help you track sort of over the years. So quick case studies of the impact of the arts. And we're going to start by heading down to Olympia. And the reason I'm picking Olympia is that Michael Cade, who is head of the Economic Development Council, was one of our ArtsWA pilot studies using the Creative Vitality Index to try and really make sense of the economy that he was sort of working with in Thurston County. So you can see population-wise, it's kind of similar to here. They have a pretty high CVI of 0.73. And he was sort of amazed by how many jobs he had and the kinds of jobs. Software publishing, for example, is pretty robust down there, and he didn't realize it was to that extent. And he took these figures, and he then mixed them up with all of the other economic data he was so used to seeing, but made this an integral part of it. And what he was doing was tracking jobs and how they were going in the creative industries, how those jobs were moving up and down, especially through that period of the recession. Moving on, he looked specifically at the creative jobs through the recession. So what happened? Was manufacturing jobs and so on were going down in a big way. I'm sure it was the same out here. But what he found was really interesting was that the creative economy jobs were hanging on. They were not going away in nearly the same numbers. And in fact, as you can see here, they were ticking up regardless of recession or no recession. So again, that gave him a real understanding for what he was dealing with. These are serious jobs that are more likely to sustain a downturn than some other jobs. He then also took various cities around the country and he looked at Olympia versus other places and what percentage of the entire workforce was in the creative occupations part of it. And you can see there, these are large numbers. And I would be surprised if out here in the Tri-Cities you didn't find the same thing in terms of complete numbers of people who are being employed by creative industries. So there's Olympia right in the middle at 41%. And Seattle is higher, not surprisingly, but not a whole bunch. And look at Austin, Texas, where we all think of it as nothing but the arts. And, Olympia, you don't necessarily think of it that way. Mind you, politics is kind of an art form. But I'm not sure they're necessarily in the creative economy. Some of them are. Some of them probably should be a little more. But again, a very interesting piece. And really what this is showing is how you can use this data to really interpret your own community. And this is another piece where he sort of looked at the labor force and he'd sort of drilled down a bit further into types of jobs. And you can see there the percentage of the labor force in creative occupations. And Boulder is one of the highest in the country, by the way. And then you've got, Seattle and so on, and just doing those kinds of comparisons. And this was putting Olympia versus other Washington cities. He didn't actually have one over here, really, but... Again, it gives you a really sort of a good feeling for what you're dealing with. I'd love to see Tri-Cities doing something like this as well. Let's go east over to Spokane. Again, one of our pilot projects when we were creating the CVI. And as they say, they're trying to be the hub of inland Washington. And they're doing a pretty darn good job of it. What you're looking at here is the Fox Theater, which underwent about a $10 million renovation. Absolutely gorgeous space right next to the Davenport. I don't know if any of you have been in it, but it's a gorgeous space where they now run, their symphony and everybody else plays there, but they also have a thriving business in weddings and things like that they have out in their lobbies. But Spokane was one of those places that took their numbers and really kind of ran with it once they realized, and they were frankly shocked to find what they had when they looked at it this way. So their downtown now is very much sort of reinventing itself around the arts. And you'll find that is sort of a recurring theme around our state. Anybody here from Everett? Anybody know Everett? You've been there, right? So let's go back maybe 10 years, and Everett was kind of a bit of a sketchy downtown. You remember that? It wasn't necessarily a place you said, I must go to Everett this weekend. So they've changed that. Congratulations to Everett. They've done an amazing job. So this is Snohomish County, and their CVI is at 0.51. Again, we're not saying this is high or low, just that's what it is. So this is the county within which you find Everett. And if you look at one of the sort of in fact, let me just move on to, so 0.51, we're now at Everett itself is at 0.6. And 10 years ago, that would not have been the case. And one of their largest employees, one of their largest job categories is glass blowing and glazing and things like that. And that is because of the Shack Art Center. The Shack Art Center is built in part with art space money, and art space is to do with affordable live-work space for artists, where you bring artists into a downtown and they become that transformative sort of buzz that people like, that kind of ambiance of a downtown that is hip and cool and lots of things going on. But then, pretty soon it gentrifies, and then guess who has to move out? It's the artists. So thinking ahead to some of the projects you're looking at here, you might want to bear that in mind. So they did this very successfully here with the Shack Art Center, and wouldn't hurt to make a trip out there. I would suggest for some of your, maybe stimulate some great ideas. So this block was just sort of blah, like an Everett block. It wasn't very exciting, and then now we have this, and this is live workspace, affordable housing up top. Down below, you've got the Shack Art Center with a hot shop, which is where so much of this art, the glass blowing and so on is happening. And then across the street, you now have an apartment block that is going up. They took down another sort of old block. And the apartment developer and the condominiums, this is sort of just living wage apartments and condos, said, I'm going to build down there because this is here. And this organization and all the other organizations it houses, they've been doing extremely well. And then they've now put it this Lightscape project, which is helping define this downtown area of Everett, where people are now flocking because it's a cool spot. And the lights you see there, it's about a $100,000 project for 11 light fixtures that have a rotating sort of seasonal aspect to them. They use gobos, which are essentially sort of silhouettes you put on the lights that then produce these kind of cool images. But this is, and it's been part of their streetscape improvement. And Everett really is a very, very different place, so I encourage a visit. Down to Vancouver, Washington, where, again, another of our pilot projects, they discovered what they had. This is 2011. And they took some of our data and they just interpreted it in this slightly different way. And if you look at really any of these things, look at, say, non-profit active arts organizations, with the 10% there at 4.7 million in 2011. And then here we go to 2012. And the percent went down, but the actual revenues have gone up in almost every single case. And again, this was something where they said, okay, we have all these things, so let's work on our downtown. Let's do these things because we now know what we have in terms of a creative economy. So at the arts agency level, we're looking at ways to impact in the most meaningful way communities like this. We have a limited budget. There's only so much we can do, but therefore we need to be smart in the way we do it. And we need to be able to work with partners to be able to leverage what you have and bring our own expertise in ways that make sense to a community like this. So creative districts, some of you know these things as arts districts or museum districts or cultural districts. And around our state, people are sort of designating parts of their downtowns as, whatever, call it whatever they like, arts district, for example, or a museum district. But the thought at the agency is that we want to, and we're hoping, if we can, to get this through starting in January, to get some legislation passed that will be a statewide creative districts program that will allow us to help you if you decided that there was an area that fit the criteria we would establish, that you could then have a state-certified creative district. And typically, a creative district will be sort of defined by a concentration of creative businesses, maybe a performing arts center or something that anchors it, museums or galleries and things like that, where you've got somewhere where you can direct your tourists or your locals want to come to because there is this concentration that becomes kind of cool and then breeds more people wanting to live in those areas and so on. And perhaps your Vista project is going to be ripe for something like this. But the thought would be that we have then across the state, we have some uniformity to it. So it isn't just, hey, let's just call this the arts district and put a bunch of signs up. Nothing wrong with that. But this would give everybody a common sort of standard to rise to. So there would have to be certain things within that district that we would then certify, along with, of course, all your very own idiosyncratic pieces that make up Tri-Cities versus a Vancouver or a Seattle. But then you have the state stamp of approval, plus we hope to be able to build in the possibility of loan programs, maybe some tax advantages to artists within the districts, things like that to make it a really attractive piece. And then tourism is going to be all over this because they can then, sort of point to the creative districts around our state and say to a tourist, yes, go to these because they'll have these qualities. And, tourists then kind of know what they're getting. And you throw in your wine districts and all the arts that go with wine drinking, for better, which just seems to go hand in hand, doesn't it? You guys are ripe for something very cool. Quick examples of districts where they haven't, nobody's calling it creative districts yet because that's the term I think we're going to coin at the state level. But Tacoma did a great job with sort of putting together so many of their great arts institutions and creating new ones to make a downtown that today is really sparkly. Again, 10 years ago, it was more like gangland drive-by shootings. Whereas today it's more like glass blowing. Let's go and see a great show. So it's a little bit different, a bit more attractive to go downtown. Anybody been to Tacoma recently? I mean, what a difference, isn't it? I mean, what a difference. 12 years ago, I ran a conference there, and it was sketchy time still, but it was sort of up and coming. And the whole conference was walking from the Broadway Center of the Performing Arts to where the Murano Hotel is today. And as we walked back, it was about 10 at night, there was one of those chalk outlines on the ground, sort of like this, And, of course, most of my folks thought it was performance art, a bit like supercalifragilistic. But no, it actually was a real live murder, But I don't think you'd find that today. So maybe you'd find the performance art bit now, which would be kind of nice. Dale Chihuly, of course, Tacoma is very lucky to have a Dale Chihuly and to have the Museum of Glass. But now they have the Children's Museum. This is the History Museum with the hot shop right behind it. Tacoma Art Museum, which just got an enormous bequest, as you know, of Western art that makes it now the biggest repository of Western art, I believe, in the world. And it's well worth visiting. And 12 years ago, I don't think that bequest would have gone to Tacoma. But, today, absolutely ready for it. And America's Car Museum. So you've got something for everybody. Let's hop on to Vancouver, Washington. So again, same thing. I talked about how they made deliberate attempts and deliberate efforts to transform their downtown with public art. And by the way, you have some absolutely gorgeous public art here and more coming. Their Main Street now is kind of a happening place. And it's just become somewhere where people want to gather. And every city, every area has to have those gathering places where the community will gather. And Vancouver has done that very well. Seattle is creating their Capitol Hill arts districts, and they're looking at cultural and arts districts. And when I talked with them about the state plan, they said, absolutely, we'd love that, because it would give, it just adds another level of approval and that kind of toolkit approach to helping any community do something like this. So Capitol Hill, up until fairly recently, all the artists were in what was called auto row, like full of cars and stuff. So it was kind of light industrial, and of course, the artists could afford that because they're all probably in warehouses or something. But now it's becoming really very hip and very fun, and all kinds of good things happen on Capitol Hill. And they're, again, making very deliberate sort of ways of creating space and living spaces where the artists can stay, because that then will make sure Capitol Hill retains the ambiance and atmosphere that it needs to. Okay, so this is going to look familiar. So Vista, I mean, this is what a canvas you have to potentially paint on as a community. And I, having heard some of the great ideas about a performing arts center being an anchor for this, I can tell you that is probably an extremely good idea. And I know you're going to be very smart about what you build and how you build it and who is involved, which I hope will be the whole community getting behind it. But as an anchor, building in maybe live workspace for artists and making somewhere that is central to all of your cities and where it'll become that gathering place. And, unlike Seattle, you don't have rain all the time. So, you've got it made in the shade, as it were, in many ways. But I'm going to eagerly be watching this development, and please do make use of the State Arts Agency when we can help. Building for the Arts comes to mind as a resource. And any of you familiar with the Building for the Arts state program? Couple hands waving about. Essentially, it is state money for Building for the Arts. It's not a huge amount. Typically 8 to 10 million in a biennium. It's run through the Department of Commerce, but I chair it and have chaired it for the state now for quite a few years. And it's money that is 20% of a total capital project. It must be for capital construction of an arts-related facility or a piece of a facility. And we can give you up to $2 million or 20%, whichever is less, of a total project. And it can't come at the beginning of a project, but it could come towards the end when other people have committed to it, and we're clear that this is a project that is going to fly. We're not allowed to give you state money for just an idea. You have to be further down the line than that. But I can tell you, if you come to us with a project, if you start talking to us now, us being Building for the Arts, we can help nurture that project in a way that when you do come, you will have a strong project to present to us as a panel. And we'll fall over backwards to give money to anywhere outside of Seattle, I can tell you. So, do consider this a resource. And not just for the Vista project, but for other projects that you have that involve capital construction. So we can't do new seats or a new sound system, but we can do, rebuilding of the backstage that includes a sound system. So if you're smart about it, we can pretty much really try to give you some money. So please, talk to me later, or just get in touch, and we'll help you craft that in the best way possible. So last but not least, wanted to leave some time for questions, but I wanted to quickly run through what we do as a state arts agency besides the creative economy. And we run the state's public art. And what that means is we have 1% for public art that is generated by capital construction of K through 12 schools, agencies like, state arts agencies, prisons, universities, and so on, which all will then kick off this percent for art. And as you can see, we're the second oldest program. Anybody know who the oldest program would be? That would be Hawaii. And they came in about a year before us. But, having just started at the Arts Agency, I think I can say candidly that I think we have the best program in the country. And it's extremely well done. And there's nothing to do with me. I just have an amazing staff that runs a really good program. And it's a tremendous process where if money is generated out here, for example, and you end up with an allocation at one of your schools, for example, my team will come out and work with you and the school and the community to make sure that the public art that gets built, usually in place as part of the construction, is something that you have all chosen, and you've chosen the artist you want to work with, and you're totally happy with it. We have 4,500 pieces of public art out around the state, which we now have to take care of as well. More coming online all the time, but this is just a couple of the pieces out here in your area. So this is out at Washington State University, and beautiful spot by the river, heavily used as a lot of public art is for just sitting on or being amongst. This is out in Pasco. I don't know if any of you know these places or these pieces, but your kids go to school with something like this, and it's a transformative thing. They don't necessarily even think about it, but in the same way as it transforms a city, a streetscape, these kinds of things really add to the way a place feels. And Justin mentioned the transformative power of the arts, but that is exactly what this kind of thing is all about. We work very hard to make sure that arts in education is an included part of a curriculum across our state in every school, and that every school has an arts educator. So how are most of your schools faring, would you say, like on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being great? How are we doing? A 2.5. Okay, all right. And that would probably be about typical, unfortunately, for our state, in that, I don't know how many of you know it, but at the federal level and at the state level, to have an arts curriculum, to have it as core to the curriculum, is the law. But it is the law, right? Unfortunately, when you come down to the state, to the local level, apparently the law doesn't matter anymore. And they do all the time. Schools can choose to sideline an arts curriculum or take it out altogether. And they'll do this because of STEM. We, of course, are very, very much proponents of STEAM, where you put the arts back into that piece. Thank you. And, it isn't just because we want all the kids to be able to paint or play music. We do. But, thinking about the development of that creative brain, remember Mr. Nintendo, we're missing an opportunity when we do not let the kids develop their brains in that way. And also some of the statistics about arts in education and what it does in terms of keeping kids in school. The kids who have the hardest time often will learn differently or will stay in school because they have an interest in playing music or being on stage or whatever it might be. And when you put a kid on stage and suppose they're a musician, number one, the brain they're developing when they're learning music is very similar to the math or science brain. But they're also on stage, so they're learning about public presentation. They're also learning about working as a team if you're part of a band or an orchestra. There are so many things that become core and critical to being a well-rounded adult. And an arts curriculum gives that like nothing else. So I encourage you to work with your school boards, because people don't want to get rid of an arts curriculum. They just somehow feel they must because of the other requirements. But I think just remember how crucial it is. And we have statistics coming out of your ears to show how important this is. So, just think of your own kids, your grandkids, and what they get out of this. And the statistic about kids staying in school and graduating if they participate in the arts is something like they're twice as likely to stay in if they have an arts curriculum. This is regular kids. But if they are at-risk kids, they're 5 times more likely to stay in. So, the statistics really speak to the fact that this would be a good thing to do. I should mention Poetry Out Loud, which is one of the programs we run for the National Endowment, and then it's then sort of worked locally by all our partners in schools and so on. And last year, Elizabeth Moe from Benton County was the state champion for Poetry Out Loud. So I encourage you to... And not an easy thing to do. We had 20-something thousand kids participated in Poetry Out Loud this year. And to end up to be the top one in the state, that's not an easy thing to do. And Elizabeth went on to the national championship. She didn't win, but she did extremely well. But 3 years ago, the national champion was from Spokane. So we have a pretty good track record with Poetry Out Loud. And for those not familiar with it, just real quickly, it's about kids taking some of the greatest works in literature, in poetry literature, from 800 or so poems, hundreds of authors from around the world. They run the gamut from, Shakespeare through Emily Dickinson, through Walt Whitman, and anybody you can think of, really. The kids have to pick 4 poems. They go to the website, which is the Poetry Out Loud website, and they pick 4 pieces, and they then memorize them, which is not easy to do. You've got Hiawatha, right? So here we are, we're memorizing. And then you have to get on stage and actually sort of produce this dramatically. You're not just reading from a book. You know, you're up on stage, overcoming all that stage fright thing, and now you're learning to not only memorize, but you're presenting what you learn. So it's, if you get a chance to go to your regional final, or you're welcome to come to the state final, it's free. It's in Tacoma, March the 6th, I think the date is. It's a Saturday. We'd love to see you, and you would be astonished at these kids. They are really something. You'd be proud of them all. We love to give money out if we can, as much money as we have, and we definitely have given out a little bit out here. Again, one of my missions, this is just a couple of examples, and of course we have the master singers and the Three Rivers group here. But we are, for me, one of my priorities is to be able to invest much more heavily in communities. So as I said at the beginning, I'm looking to ways to leverage more money, partnerships with other foundations and so on, to maybe make our impact a little bigger. And so if you ever are talking with your legislators, please tell them to support us. That would be great. The State Poet Laureate, that's a program we run for the state, and we started it actually. This is Elizabeth Austin, the current State Poet Laureate, and you know, if you're called Elizabeth Austin, you have to be a State Poet Laureate, I think, wouldn't you think? And the next Poet Laureate, who will be announced in January, is actually going to be from Spokane, so name to follow in January. We know who it is, but we can't tell you yet. It's a secret. And actually, the only reason we're not telling you is that we're trying to. We've pulled up the whole process to get the Poet Laureate, and we know who they are early, so they can work. So they from Spokane can work with Elizabeth and sort of have more time to work into being the Poet Laureate. They take over in February. Without everybody in the world asking them to come to their place and sort of getting on their case right away, which they will, which is great. But in January, they'll start that. So they got 2 months to sort of work through it. The Governor's Arts and Heritage Awards, we gave out half a dozen of these really beautiful awards just a couple of weeks ago. And we didn't have anybody from here. We did have a Spokane winner. The education arts leader was Heidi Arbogast from the Museum and Arts Center out there in Spokane. But these are given out for people and organizations doing amazing work in their communities. So please watch for that when those nominations become open, usually around June next year. Please do nominate some of the folks you have out here. And then last but not least, this just shows you a little bit of a sort of the sort of programs that we're doing around the state. In each case where you see an icon, that is an aggregate number, so there are many programs within each place. We're in pretty much every county. We would like to be in these counties in a much deeper way. And again, that's my commitment to you, is that I'm working as hard as we can to be able to invest in a more meaningful and a deeper way in communities like yours. Oh, actually, one more thing. Sorry. This is, we're in a strategic planning mode at the agency level. And so we would love to hear from you. We have a pretty simple survey. It's not just for arts organizations, it's for anybody. And if you wouldn't mind, I'll leave this sitting up here. If you wouldn't mind, write that down. Just go and take the survey for us. We've had, 400 people so far have taken it, but we'd like to have thousands if possible. So I'm spreading the word in this way, but if everybody in this room could take it, I would really appreciate it. Probably take you 10 minutes, not very long. So yeah, really get a screenshot, would you? And I'll be happy to send this out via the arts organizations too. So, okay, any questions? And thank you so much for your kind attention.
So this is my last luncheon as chair of this great chamber. And as I look back on 2015 and the many accomplishments of our chamber, I know the chamber is very well positioned to be a key player in helping to continue unleash the full potential of the Tri-Cities region. I'm pleased to say that Marty Conger, the Chief Financial Officer of PNNL, will be taking over as chamber chair for 2016. Marty and I share the same vision to continue to transform the chamber as we drive future successes that we know we can achieve. Also, a special thanks, and Renee's not here, so I don't think he's here, but I'm going to have to, I'll tell him myself when I see him personally, but Renee was a past chair, and he was incredibly supportive and nice to me during this year. He's just a great guy. And then, of course, thank you to the chamber staff, Lori, Austin, Elizabeth, Ashley, Lisa, Chad, Jillian, Brandon, Diane, and Liz. You guys do a great job and are very dedicated team. And finally, it's been an honor to work with all of you as Chamber Chair and to help play a small role in the future success of our region. I'm truly appreciative of all the support I've received from everyone. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. So lots of thanks today. Today's luncheon sponsors, we want to thank the Arts Center Task Force, Arts Foundation of the Mid-Columbia, the Mid-Columbia Symphony, Mid-Columbia Ballet, Mid-Columbia Masters Singers, the Mid-Columbia Musical Theater. And also to today's networking partner, thank you to Columbia Basin Dive and Rescue, of course to Karen for her excellent presentation today, and as always to the staff of the Red Line for the great job that they do, and to Charter Communications back there for filming and rebroadcasting this program, which I hope a lot of other people watch that were not here today. So thank you all again for coming out to this great event. We appreciate the time you're making for us and this fantastic year of 2015 that the Chamber's had. So remember, it's great business to do business with the Tri-City Regional Chamber members, and have a great day and a very happy holidays. We'll see you all next year.